Welcome back to Broome Tower. Not for the final time, but for the last time in a little while anyway. Now that we're done collecting most of the miscellaneous crap that's laying around, there's a couple things that I'll get later. Much later. Anyway, we can now actually proceed. The way forward is also the way down. Quite a ways down, really. That didn't quite go as expected. I think I did it a little too early. There we go. You don't need to do this, but you do get a special item if you do. The Strength Ring, which does literally the exact same thing as the Dexterity Ring, except with Strength. +5. I would say that it's a little bit less useful, simply because two-handing exists, so you're usually not as strapped for strength requirements. But if you've got something with good strength scaling, or you really need that extra strength and you don't want to invest the points, then by all means. You've got 4 ring slots, you might as well use them. The descent down this sort of ramshackle broken tower, it's either unfinished or something really bad happened to it, can be kind of difficult. There's ashen soldiers on each floor, and depending on where you land, where they go, and just general camera fuckery, they can prove quite a challenge. Now, if you see different colored ground, do not step on it. It will simply have you fall through. While you ultimately want to do that anyway, it would probably be better for you if you knew exactly where you were landing, and if you didn't land directly on another patch of broken ground. It can, depending on where you drop in from, it can sort of cause a chain reaction of falling that, well, amusing will usually get you killed. You can utilize plunging attacks fairly effectively here. In fact, with some weapons it's sort of necessary, simply because 2 at once in close quarters can be pretty difficult. Santier's Spear, however, is actually really efficient at taking these guys out, so it's not a big deal for us. The Partisan's +6 is actually kind of a nice find. I mean, if we didn't already have one. The vanilla Partisan is only on sale from Ornifex, so you may honestly never meet in the average playthrough because she's so well hidden. So if you got the DLC and you ended up on your way here, a more or less required path, then you get one for free, already upgraded quite a bit. Now, I believe that I mentioned in the last video that I prefer the Helix Halberd for taking on the Iron Warriors. It doesn't seem to be doing much good here, but my reasoning is that it does more damage in one attack, and when two-handing it doesn't lock you in place for as long. The stun lock from the Twin Blade stance is not helpful against such huge enemies. The bleeding effect is honestly kind of unimpressive. It's mostly because such a huge weapon does so much damage anyway. Once more, the tight quarters in this room can make that fight more difficult than it needs to be, but if you pay attention and don't get hit over and over like some kind of idiot, then you'll be fine. Naturally, I had trouble. Now, that possessed armor is somewhat unique in his weird extendo arm spinny attack. Either way, you just want to run past him as fast as possible because he's being enchanted with ash and is thus invulnerable. Well, not invulnerable, but he will revive when you die. Invulnerable. I can't talk. My nose is stuffy. There is also a chest up there containing the sorcery clutch ring, I believe, but given that it is neither very useful to us and also pretty dangerous, I'm going to get it later. This is the very bottom level of the tower. It's got a bit of a kiln of the first flame look to it. Before you do anything else in this room, you want to make a mad dash over here, because there is a bonfire. With that safe haven established, we can more effectively explore the area. You don't really want to run through that gauntlet again. There are actually multiple ashen idols in this room, four in total. This is why I recommend that you do not explore that room with the Iron Warrior in it up above, because that has another ashen idol in it that doesn't actually do anything, really. You want to save all of your smelter wedges for the ones down here, because, as you might have guessed, you fight the boss in this area, and their warmth effect can actually power him up. Or I suppose it would be more accurate to say heal him. He doesn't get an ashen effect, thank God. The healing is bad enough, of course, so... There is one more smelter wedge you can get, however, we do not have the means to access it just yet. So depending on when you come to Broome Tower, it can sort of be a nasty surprise that you'll suddenly run out of smelter wedges. There's a good deal of treasure just hidden in the ashen... I keep calling them statues, but let's just keep calling them statues. It's more pleasant that way. There's a good deal of treasure in those statues if you knock them over. Including 3 Titanite chunks, which at this point is still fairly significant. You can eventually buy them, but they're pretty expensive. They're no bloodstone chunks, though, I tell you what. You want to talk about rare upgrade material, there you have it. Oh good. I was hoping that I'd pick one of these up. A while ago people were talking about this in the thread. This is the smelter hammer. This gargantuan weapon requires 70 strength to use. And 6 dexterity, but at this point who's counting? So even two-handing it, and even with the strength wing, that would be from a different game, we have no hope of actually using this effectively. I can still show off its attacks, though, and how ridiculous it looks. It also has an immense base power. Just it has almost 400, completely unupgraded. It also has a really, really funny alternate strong attack, where you simply careen yourself off into the air. It's more of a gimmick weapon than anything. It requires pretty much the most stat investment in a single stat of any weapon ever. I think that the Majestic Greatsword has a greater overall requirement, but... Go away, Carillion, you're a nerd. It's honestly pretty rare that you would pump a single stat up to 70. You'd have to pretty much go all in on smashing things if you were going to do that. There we go. That is the penultimate Ashen Idol to clear out, and now we can fight the boss more or less unimpeded. Seriously, who would summon Carillion? Hello, bearer of the curse. I am very old. Ridiculous. Anyway, before we fight the boss, it's time to do a wee bit of preparation. Not a lot. We've mostly got the setup we want already. However, I make another error here and sort of misremember what exactly the boss is weak to. After some experimentation, I'm pretty sure it's not actually magic damage. Oh well. It doesn't take me over the encumberment limit, so it's not like it hurts me. The boss run here is very quick, actually, which is merciful. You can simply blow by the Iron Warriors for the most part. They take so long getting out of the ground. This is the final battle arena. It's got plenty of room, and a big sword in the middle, with an even bigger guy to wield it. This is Brume, the Fume Knight. The Fume Knight has a bit of a reputation of being one of the hardest bosses in the game. However, most people will also say it's probably one of their favorites. The thing about Brume is that he is extremely tightly tuned to what you can do in the Dark Souls 2 combat system. He is essentially a boss, whereas Vinnie Caravello once said, he is essentially playing Dark Souls 2. He is essentially also playing Dark Souls, and you lose when you play it more poorly than he does. Now, of course, he certainly has some advantages over the player, including a metric crap ton of hit points, and just really punishing attacks, but the concept remains the same. He attacks more or less in the same ways that you do, except for this attack, which you can dodge simply by backing away. He attacks with a variety of short and long sword attacks. He tends to become more aggressive once he lights his sword on fire in the middle of the fight. The most important thing to realize about the Fume Knight is that not all of his attacks come out instantly. A great deal of them have a lot of wind-up to them, so if you roll right away, you will get punished. Beating him essentially comes down to realizing when these attacks come. There's not a lot to really describe about the boss and how he fights because it's very straightforward. He hits you with a sword. Sometimes he hits you with a small sword. He usually won't once the sword goes on fire, though. Then it's just big sword time all the time. I would recommend in this fight that you never go below half health, and before you do anything, you should probably make sure that you're in good health. You're also going to want as much adaptability as you can get away with, simply because good fucking luck blocking any of this guy's attacks. It's really difficult. Especially once he enters this phase, because he starts doing a combination of physical and dark damage. Or potentially physical and fire. Also, that attack has enormous range. Don't do what I did. Don't roll away from it. Because then that will happen. That is how fast that fight can turn around. You can play more or less perfectly for the entire time. Well, not that I did, but you have very little margin for error, especially once he enters that last phase. his more dangerous attacks, at least in my opinion, are his backhand swipes. They come out very fast, and they hurt quite a bit, especially if he does it with the large sword. The rest of his attacks, while punishing and powerful, tend to be telegraphed fairly well. So if you pay attention and keep on your toes, and most importantly don't get greedy, you should be okay. He can also occasionally block attacks by putting his sword in that defensive position. I don't like it so much because it's one of the few things in this fight that I feel is a little almost too fast. He kind of puts it up in a way that doesn't have a lot of warning, and he can absolutely punish you very hard if you manage to hit him while he's guarding. Because since the sword is so huge, if you hit it head on, it will act just like an entire shield would. Behind him is usually a safe place to be, but not always. With his full-bodied swings, he can honestly go pretty much in a 360 or more likely 270 degree. He has a lot of coverage, is what I'm saying. I'm bad at math. Generally speaking, it's better to roll into him than away from him. Not always, but usually, simply because rolling away gives you a good chance of being hit by simply the rest of his follow-through, because it's so long. Especially this attack. I think I demonstrated aptly why you shouldn't roll away. Fortunately, most of his attacks are fairly slow and deliberate, so once you learn them, finding opportunities to attack him back is not very difficult. He gets a little bit more jumpy as the fight goes on, but you really only want to hit him once or twice at max before you stop anyway, because he will absolutely punish you if you go for more. Now, I might have made that look not so unmanageable, but that fight took me a lot of tries, especially coming off of Bloodborne, where it would actually be a stupidly easy fight there, simply because the player character is so much faster in everything. But in this fight, it is so finely tuned to the combat system, it is quite a challenge, but it's also really fun. Our reward for beating the Fume Knight is the Crown of the Old Iron King, and one more Soul of Nadalia fragment. We have 11 so far, and there's 12 in all. We'll be able to get the final one a little later, as I keep saying incessantly. That just about does it for Broome Tower, at least for now. So, going to make our way carefully back to the bonfire, and warp on out and take a break, and perhaps do something different next time. Until then,